everyone, and welcome to this series of webinars. We're going to be talking about designing, issuing, and responding to expression of interest, and specifically looking at suppliers of evaluation work. This particular course is going to focus on us who, from time to time, find ourselves with the need to respond to expression of interest or calls for proposals, etc. I will go through a few remarks just to acknowledge our organizers who are here, and also to acknowledge everyone, our participants, and our facilitators and co-facilitators. Just to briefly say that today is going to be, we expect it to be a very funny process because everyone here has some experience to share. I'm just going to take you through as a facilitator. But before I do that, it's good to just highlight a few details about myself. I've been in the industry for over 15 years. When I say industry, I mean international development work, community development work, but focusing mainly on program evaluations, program designs. I've been a DME manager for 5 years with one of the international NGOs, working in 9 countries, mainly supporting national offices in the technical designs and monitoring and evaluation of their work. I've also worked from the donor side. Now, why I'm saying this is that I had an opportunity to experience firsthand some of the challenges evaluation and evaluators face from the other side of the aisle. And then I've also been involved recently in a lot of work as a consultant and managing consulting contracts. So that has given me, fortunately, an ability to understand some of the challenges we face. So I hope I'll be able to share some of that during the process, but I also trust that everyone here has a story to share and we will share together. I'm going to run a few things in terms of how this day will look like and explain a little bit of some outline. Right, so in a nutshell, this is how the day would look like. Having a webinar or a workshop online is a very interesting development with the advent of COVID-19. We're all now being forced to be experts in technology. And certainly I've been trying to figure out a few things here and there, but hopefully we'll try to make this as interactive as possible so that everyone feels involved. And if we all participate in the same way, then we can make this whole process fun and easy. But on the screen right now is a list of the different sessions we'll be doing. I've tried to make it as comprehensive as possible so that the more information we have about what's coming up, the easier and the better we are to prepare and to participate. We'll be expecting to do different types of sessions, presentations, we have group chats. I'm not sure how many of us would have had an opportunity to use group chats online. So we'll break into smaller sessions. I think it will happen automatically, will be assigned into different groups. And when the time comes, you'll be asked to join that group virtually, of course, and discuss some few topics. And then after that, you'll be expected to come back to the main group and provide feedback. In those sessions, we'll be expected to at least select someone who is going to be the lead speaker. So we'll show you the clear instructions as we get along. But this is just to highlight and show what is to come. We will have a short convenience break around 10:30, 10:25. We'll keep logged in is just a matter of just rushing to the bathroom, or maybe taking a cup of tea or whatever it is, and then we come back again into the session. We expect to finish around 11:55, 12, thereabout, but we'll try to keep time as much as possible. We're going to be looking at two main themes today. We're going to touch on basic concepts of evaluation. We'll explore a bit of some theories around that. I know a lot of you already have this information, so this is just some confirmation, just to make sure that we are on the same page when we get into the process. Because of course, today's session is mainly to help our practitioners in the evaluation sector to get to a place where we can share our experiences, we can share our learning, we can share our challenges, and then we can also together as a team try to figure out some solutions. Of course, bearing in mind that our experiences are different, but that is why this diversity is important. So we'll be talking about some challenges in identifying what appropriate opportunities looks like, where to find them, and how to do that. And then, of course, some planning for success as an evaluator, how to plan for consulting bidding and how to plan in advance. So all this will be scheduled as different sessions. Okay, so let's get into it. Evaluation is a profession encompassing work and assessing programs, products, policies, theories. It is a wide range of areas that are covered. But in some cases, it even involves evaluating the evaluation process itself. But simply put, it's just a systematic process of evidence gathering, analysis, interpretation, which of course tells us whether the program is working or not, and what works. This can be applied in a project, it can be applied in policy, it can be applied in products. But this is just to give us the working definition of what are we talking about when we're saying evaluation. We know that's a process, but within that, of course, evaluation is a sector. It's a sector full of a lot of stakeholders. Some are interested in providing services, some are interested in seeking those services from the practitioners. So that's our working definition. It is also a field of practice. You might want to call it maybe applied sciences. So there are broad types we can talk about and the nature of evaluations in general. It can be categorized affirmative or summative, but just put it simple is implementation of process evaluation and outcome or impact. That is gathering information about whether a project is working or not, how it is working, what factors are influencing the process, is there any learning coming out of it? And of course, practitioners, donors, and other stakeholders would want to know, after all this effort, what were the outcomes? Is it actually achieving what we thought would be the outcome of the project in the beginning? And also, is there any change? Is there efficacy out of it? Is there any benefits coming out of the whole process? So those, broadly speaking, are the main types of evaluations. But within that, of course, there are different approaches that you would see. So within the broad types of evaluations, it is important, of course, for us to note that there is a lot of talk about the results and presentation of results and findings. And to what extent can we say they are proving that the program has contribution to the change that has happened, or there's attribution. And those two different, those terms really defines the process or how we're going to conduct an evaluation. Contribution, of course, we are acknowledging that there are several other factors that we cannot control. And it's difficult to claim that we have, as a result of the work that we have carried out, this change can be attributed to that. So we then say, okay, so we, as an evaluator, if you're doing contribution-based, usually these are program evaluations, not impact evaluations. So impact evaluations will be examples of attribution-based evaluations, where you want to test and have a degree of confidence to say for certain, these activities, these interventions, there's a causal relationship, there's a causality there. So they've attributed to the change. But where in most of the programs that we work in the communities, you have the government also in there, you have the private sector, you have other players, you have other stakeholders already involved. So it's really difficult unless you can control the situation. So those two terms will define even the methodology that you're going to use. If you can't control, then maybe you don't want to do experimental designs in that because you can't control it. But if you can control, maybe that's where you need to consider that. So you will see within that framework that evaluations can either be affirmative inquiry, can be exploratory, using participatory approaches, could be experimental, where it is possible to control or to apply some technical approaches to ensure that maybe the situation can be, you can easily deduct some information and data to claim attribution. Where you can't do that, of course, you can consider quasi-experimental designs. So this just gives us an overview of basic concepts of evaluations, the nature of evaluations, the different types of evaluations, and what circumstances you need to do one type or the other, depending, of course, on the outcome. So this is just a quick summation of these two broad types of evaluations, the formative and summative. Now, in a nutshell, in practice, you usually would hear of needs assessment, implementation evaluation. I must say the process evaluation, which is implementation evaluation, is very rare these days. It's mainly because it's been replaced by the need for a strong monitoring system, and also because it's probably the cost. If you have a very strong M&E system, the assumption is the learning that you get from a process evaluation, you can actually get it from the learning, from the strong M&E system. But a process evaluation simply looks at the implementation. Have we implemented the way we've designed the project to do? Do we have efficacy across the board? Are we seeing any efficiencies? Is there any key learnings that we can draw and do adaptive management as we go? So a program would need to have all that kind of information, but if they can answer the same questions using another way, which is an ongoing monitoring system, which I believe most organizations have opted for, the investing in strong M&E system. So you have very few cases where programs are asking for a process evaluation or implementation evaluation because of that. But the needs assessment seems to still be something that's being asked from time to time, and this informs the design of a project. The more common ones are outcome evaluations and impact evaluations. Of course, there are some to do with M&E system review or policy impact reviews, but majority of the evaluation calls out there in the sector are to do with outcome evaluation and impact evaluation. In fact, outcome evaluation probably takes like 60%, probably around 40% or less will be impact evaluations, for the reasons I've explained before that. Most programs, because these are in social settings, and it's difficult to control the whole process. You can't have control mechanism in there. So it will be difficult, of course, maybe very costly and unjustifiably so, to then try to invest in attribution-based evaluations. But we have RCTs and etc. in where the program is fully funded. But the majority of the evaluations, they fit in the outcome category. And these are summative, of course. All right. Just some few terms, just the number of terms you probably familiar with, you already come across them, the key concepts and topics in the evaluation field. Now, also I want to say, even as I speak and present this, please, if you have got any questions, if you've got any comment, don't forget to put in the chat box. We'll be going through those. There'll be times for feedback sessions where we'll be going through some of those questions and also trying to understand from everyone's perspective if we are indeed walking at the same pace. So you may have already come across these terms, evaluation theory. So it's important that we just have a basic, understanding of what this means so that we are singing from the same hymn sheet. There are a lot of evaluation theories out there, but the evaluation theory mainly looks at the theoretical understanding, the theoretical framework of gathering evidence and why we need certain type of evidence and what methods could be possible to fit in that type of evidence. So theoretical analysis of the evaluation process and different approaches. Usually this is asked when you're doing a very big assignment, and that demonstrates that you're not just thinking of just going out in the field and collect data without the theoretical background, the basis, what's the foundation, what's the reasoning behind, what's the rationale. So that's to do with evaluation theory. Now the evaluation design also ties into the theory because each theoretical framework has an appropriate design that goes with it. And the design is the outline of how the results framework or the understanding of a program is going to be taken through. So it involves evaluation methods. Within that, it involves the types of methods going to be used in the rationale for that, whether they're going to use quantitative methods, they're going to use qualitative. But in these days, we're seeing more and more mixed methods being utilized. There was a time when the quantitative methods used to dominate, mainly because there wasn't much confidence in the qualitative because of lack of tools to justify or to produce evidence of the process. Like in those days, you would have analysis frameworks done through flip charts and thematic analysis done through that way. And you had to only believe the evaluator that they did a good job, but you couldn't have the same quality and evidence of the residue as the quantitative, where you could have the syntax data submitted, you could have the data sets, you could have all that. But now we have a lot of software such as NVivo and a lot of other online-based tools where you can do exactly the same also with qualitative data. So we're seeing more and more need for mixed methods where both qualitative and quantitative data is collected and analyzed in a systematic way, and also in a way that you can demonstrate to the stakeholders the process. You can demonstrate how and why you arrived at the conclusions. So there will be clear rationale for every conclusion made. So that's new developments, but that's very great to see. Evaluation results and framework and matrix, this is also very common. In every evaluation, if it is theory-based evaluation, that means if you're using a theory of change, you have an outline and framework of how change was supposed to happen. And within that theory framework, you would, of course, have your results and then try to frame those results on a matrix to say, if this is what we wanted to do, and these were the outcomes, these were the outputs, then, and these were the inputs, then impact should look like this. So that results framework would guide the design of the evaluation, but not all projects would have a detailed results framework or can have a results framework. In some cases, you might have to do an evaluability assessment, but these are not also very common. Evaluation practice is another very interesting term and concept. This relates to the general practice in the evaluation sector. Like you would see everybody sending out expression of interest and you ask, where did this come from? Or some will send out a call for proposal. And after a call for proposal, then they'll probably require you to develop further materials. And there's always a question around, and sometimes not necessarily consensus, but some questions around what is the best practice in commissioning evaluation? What is the best practice in conducting the evaluation? And these practices, of course, they evolve from time to time, but the evaluation practice looks at the contemporary documented practice in conducting an evaluation. What is good practice? What is not good practice? What are the challenges? What are the pitfalls? And what things can we look for? The evaluation process looks at the whole journey of conducting evaluation from end to end, from beginning to end. So that outlines what are the key parameters of conduct. If you have to, an evaluation has run right on your table, right now you want to conduct an evaluation, what are the milestones? What are the things that are usually found in any evaluation? And of course, there'll be some adaptations necessary. And in evaluation adaptations, especially these days with COVID-19, most evaluators have found themselves in a very, very difficult place worldwide. I've attended a number of sessions, webinars with other in the international arena, where everybody, literally everybody, has found themselves just grounded. The tools that we used to use for evaluation, the approaches, you simply can't do it. But at the same time, if you use innovation to try and gather data by other means, like electronically, remotely, and all that, then the question of quality also comes in. So we have not developed any systems that draws confidence from the sector in terms of the credibility of the process. So this is still a gray area, but this is also an opportunity for us at this point to start thinking and innovating about, okay, what else can we do remotely and do it with sufficient rigor and credibility that we can still convince the end users that they can get the same quality of product, even if without some of the practices we used to do. All right. Now we're going to talk about some of the reasons why we do evaluations. What pushes us to do evaluations and what pulls us to do the evaluations. So I'll call them pull and push factors. Now the pull factors are those drivers internally for the need to answer a number of questions necessary for project management. These are the things that even if we don't have funding externally, it is good and recommended for a program to do an evaluation. There are questions that you cannot answer with monitoring data, with the monitoring information. You'd need from time to time to conduct an evaluation and get some answers for the program to then implement or to continue to make some adjustments. These issues include, of course, issues of efficacy. Are we running the program efficiently? Are we leveraging on the learning? Are we doing sufficient adaptation to meet the needs of the current project? Or whether in the future, is there any learning that we can take? So all these are very, very important questions for the project to want to do evaluations on their own. But there are also other factors that are from external, like we call them these push factors. These are external demands, usually from donors and other stakeholders, other interested parties. And this includes, of course, fiduciary requirements. There are a lot of donor agencies out there whose governments and regulators require them for any funding that they've given to a project, some evidence that there was impact, or at least there was some change, or something good happened to the community that they were operating in, or some learning comes out of that. So as a requirement, as a compliancy in a way, a requirement that you have given you some money, you've actually gone to the field, you have used it, but what came out of it? So those are fiduciary requirements, and there's also accountability, not just to the donors, but also to the communities, because we spend time with these communities. Sometimes during these programs, we also frustrate or disturb the status quo, the way they've always lived. And sometimes it brings good results, sometimes it brings not so good results, but we need to be accountable as well. So that's a need. In some cases, it's about marketing also, or fundraising for donors and other partners. If they have as much information as possible of what's happening in the program, what were the results, that also enables them. That's like ammunition for them then to go out and say, this is what we're doing, to showcase their work and also encourage others to continue supporting. So the evaluation is really pushed from those angles. All right, so now we're getting to a place where we want to do a bit of brainstorming as a group. These are breakout sessions. I'll double check first with Nodmo if we're ready for the breakout sessions, and then we can break out into different rooms. There will be electronic rooms, and each room will have will be like this. I'll run through room 1 to 6. We should have, I can see we're expecting, just the participants we have about 18. So maybe we may not need all 6 rooms. We may, but we can actually. It's going to be like 3 per room, something like that. I think we can. Let's see if we can get some breakout sessions, and each room you'll be allocated. You will have a number of questions as you're seeing on the screen. The topic will be different, of course. And you'll be expected to discuss with your colleagues, write down some notes, and then one of you would be required or asked to share with the rest of the group. So this will be a 10-minute session, and this session will be timed. So you should get a notification when the time is about to come. But before we do that, let me just give an opportunity for comments or questions while we're preparing for the breakout sessions. Any comments? You can just raise your hand and unmute yourself. Maybe you can comment, or you can drop on a chat box what we've covered so far. If anyone has got a question or a comment, please do so. I'm looking at the chat box now. I'm looking for anyone who raises their hand. So, yeah. Go ahead, Noduma.
Okay. I've created 4 breakout rooms. And in those rooms, you'll breakout room 1, we have Cynthia, Annie, Mark, Victoria, and Yvonne. Breakout room 2, we have Giant, Justina, Nyebero, Samson, Walter. In room 3, Aaron, Philip Makaba, Renias, Tonderai. And then breakup room 4, we have Joseph, Noah, Patrick, and Winnie.
All right. Okay, I can see the notification now to join breakout room. So
So if everyone can join the rooms. Do we all have the notifications?
No.
Joseph, Dr. Joseph, I'm seeing you have joined breakout room 4, but I'm not seeing any other participants in the rooms.
let me go back to the session. Let me just double check, Noduma. Are we still, everyone is still here, right? No one has gone to the breakout rooms yet. Noduma.
Hello?
Has everyone gone to their breakout rooms yet?
Not yet. I haven't gone.
We haven't. No, I think we still need to be. We still need to be here because the moment they accept, then they are kicked out of this main session and they'll be in the breakout room. I did that and I found myself elsewhere when I wanted to come.
Yes, the moment you join the breakout room, you'll be kicked out of the main session.
Yes, yes. So I think for now, if we just need everyone to remain so we can finish explaining everything, and then people will go to their breakout rooms.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't realize that I just found myself kicked out and I had to find my way back. Just check that everyone is still on here. I think
yes,
so.
Everyone is still there.
Okay, because I can't see it from my end. All right then, let me just run through so we have 4 rooms. So breakout room 1, you'll be looking at evaluation practice in Zimbabwe. This is just a discussion. So what are the 2 most common challenges of conducting an evaluation as a practitioner? So this is looking at the practice in Zimbabwe. And then we discuss, we write down our points, but whatever we write, select as the 2 common challenges. Of course, we have to provide a rationale to say why we think it is so, and then select someone or choose someone who would be prepared to give feedback to the rest of the participants. Because we only have 4 groups, we may all provide feedback, but if we had more than that, maybe we're going to select just 2 or 3 randomly. Then number 2, group breakout 2, room 2, what are the 2 most competitive advantages of being an evaluation practitioner in Zimbabwe? So we think about do we really have any competitive advantage as far as the practice goes, evaluation practice? By evaluation practice, of course, we discussed about what that is, the norm of how to put out evaluations and how everyone reacts, like the status quo. Do we have a competitive advantage in operating as evaluators in Zimbabwe? If we do, what are those? We just need two. And then, of course, we'll discuss among yourself and then decide why you think so. You'll then give us some feedback. Breakout 3 is talking about, you'll be discussing about evaluation types and rationale as well. So discuss the most common types of evaluations carried out in Zim and agree on why it is so. You remember we talked about different types of evaluations from formative, we have summative, process evaluation, impact outcome. From your experience, which would you think are the most common types? And again, we need a rationale for your answer, like an explanation of why as a group you think that is so. Group number 4, or room number 4, we're going to talk about push factors. What are the most common push factors for conducting evaluations? We discussed some of them, but not all, but you need to discuss deeper. Trying to think about the practice, the practicalities of where you are in your organization or institution you're coming from. What would be those push factors? Those things that you think in the organization, regardless of whether they want to do it or not, there is enough force, enough pressure from outside to carry out evaluations. And then do we agree? I mean, do organizations or people agree and appreciate this internally? Are these push factors appreciated, or this is perceived as a burden or something like that? And then you prepare your feedback. So I had prepared another 2 sessions for room 5 and 6, but we're not going to have those. So when we come back, this is what you'll see. We will have feedback from every group, and you will unmute yourself. You will choose a group leader who would give us a few updates on that. So this is the screen that we'll see when we come back. All right then. Thank you very much. Nodumo, thank you for creating those groups. I think now we can join our respective groups. I'm not sure how whether the notification would be resent again, or you just select from your screen.
Okay, I'm moving people into groups now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have fun, and I'm sure you will enjoy the discussions. And yeah, see you back in the room again.
Log in.
I'm seeing a notification that says all participants have been invited. Confirm that you are seeing the invitation.
I have to unmute myself. Greetings, everyone. Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you're audible.
Wonderful. My sincere apologies. I think we're still struggling with the technology. The breakout sessions didn't work. I could see everyone assigned to different groups. It was working for me and other co-hosts, but it seems it's not, the system is saying it sent notifications to everyone to join breakout groups, but it's not working. But anyway, so we're going to do a plan B. A plan B is for us to do this together. We have a discussion. We could allocate, we had intended to have 10 minutes. So if we can do only 2 topics, then we can move on to the next. I just need to double check with everyone if that's okay. If anyone has any different suggestion, you can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself. This is now an open discussion forum. So feel free to unmute yourself and make your contribution. My suggestion is maybe we go through this together. Maybe just two topics and then we discuss. Then we move on to the other aspects. Hopefully we'll be able to figure out why we couldn't get everyone in their groups. There are also options to drop down some comments on the chat box. I'll ask Edson if you there you can support with, you can check if there's anything in the chat box that we need to respond to in the meantime. That would be very great as well. But in the meantime, okay, so let's start with this one. What are the two most common challenges we think evaluators face as practitioners? So we can just throw in any no answer is right or wrong. It's just a discussion. Let's get those discussions out. Yes, Yvonne, please.
I found when we were doing some evaluation work with the Ministry of Health, I thought that poor planning resulted in us arriving at centers where we were supposed to carry out evaluations and finding the people who were supposed to be collecting data from were not ready for us. So a lot of the times we're not able to collect the information that we had set out to collect. And I felt if we had planned better in advance, given these people advanced warning, we wouldn't have run into such problems.
Wonderful, wonderful, thank you. So maybe just to tease you a little bit on there, I can actually, agree with you on that. It has happened hundreds of times, and I have my own views on what might have caused that. But do you suppose the poor planning is at evaluator side or the logistical support from stakeholders, or on both?
I suppose it could have been logistical support from stakeholders, the main stakeholders being the donors.
Mm-hmm.
So in the ministry, for example, most evaluations are funded by these donors who require this evaluative evidence and data. So in that case, the poor planning, I think, was a result of the support came in late, and then we were under pressure to carry out these evaluations in a very short time, which resulted in us not being able to put in the appropriate plans in advance.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. I think we'll come back to that point. Very, very important. I think probably most people would confirm this is one of the challenges. Every time you go, even if, of course, in this case, as you say, it could be maybe, delays in releasing the funding or the resources. But there are times when even all the resources are there, you go to the field thinking, you'll find people gathered and prepared. And then when you get there, you realize that's when the local agencies begin to run from house to house, calling people in. And you'd scheduled it maybe just to be there for 1.5 hours. You realize you're going to be there for 1 day and nobody's there. So those are that's an extreme, but that is a very, very important. I think we'll need to come back to it and discuss a little bit further on that, because there are really practical issues, which I think happens on both sides of the aisle. But most importantly, our focus is, what can I do as an evaluator to mitigate such? I think that's probably what we need to have at the back of our minds. But thank you very much. That's very, very important point. Let's hear from others. What do others feel and say about that, or any other point? I'm checking on this, see who is ready to say something. I can't see any hands up, but please do unmute yourself if you want to make a contribution, either to respond to what Ivani just said, or to make a different comment. We're talking about what we would consider the most common challenges faced by practitioners when conducting an evaluation. That's what we want to discuss at this point. Of course, there are many challenges, but what would you call, right, all right, yes, go ahead, Yvonne.
I found in some cases that you want to conduct an evaluation, but in terms of baseline data, there isn't sufficient baseline data that you can use as a starting point to base your evaluation on.
Absolutely. In some, I think this we will probably also observe as we continue. Those who commission evaluations, of course, because of the push and pull factors we're talking about, some may be responding to push factors, but those push factors may come a little bit late because they have to prepare for other things. And then all of a sudden they realize, wow, we need to have an impact evaluation. It's really needed. And if we don't have it, you know, the funding might be withdrawn or something terrible might happen. And then they're now asking for a consultant to come and do an impact evaluation. But for you to do that, you need, of course, to have the baseline data. You need to have some information. You have to have, the program should have prepared for it right at the beginning. And then you find out that information is not available. That's not the end of the world, of course. But I think it rings sometimes to the expectations from those who are asking us to do it, that they may not have all the information that we need, but yet we're expected to do. That's very, very important point. But let me just go a little bit further and ask, in that case, what would be the most practical response to that? How would you go about it? And I'm just asking you specifically, but anyone. I would prefer we all contribute. I'm trying to find a way of doing this. Maybe I'll just go through the list of participants and randomly, kindly request anyone to give us their view. Since these are just general discussions, and by everybody discussing and participating, it makes the whole process easier. And you know, no one is an expert here. We're all sharing our own experiences. So it'll be good just to chip in. So in the event of the issue that has been raised of lack of baseline data, how would one, you know, proceed? What would be the mitigatory steps to take on that? Anyone wants to give it a shot? Just share your own experience. Sure, go ahead. Yes, Yvonne, I can see.
Oh, sorry. In the case of, say, the Ministry of Health, assuming, this is not the case though, but assuming that there was no baseline data, could you not triangulate and gather data from other sources? For example, the World Health Organization, UN, etc., and use this as a baseline where you don't have that data available?
You could, but there are, so the use of baseline data is an approach called difference in difference, where you will have, because even if you have baseline data alone without another kind of comparison group, it may also be difficult to actually conclude that there's contribution or attribution, if you wanted to use it that way. So ideally, you would have your comparison group, you would have the project sample, and you would have the baseline data that will give you, of course, the basis. And then the differences between those two groups and the difference that will give you, but that's not the end of the world. You could still, as you said, you could still use other methods. And one of them, of course, is to triangulate with the available data elsewhere, or you could do outcome harvesting, look at what those outcomes are and try to work backwards and see if there's some evidence that they actually emanated from the programming. Yeah, sure. I saw someone raise one, unmuting themselves. I think they can't remember who it was. But I'm going to ask, okay, Philip, please, go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Doc. In some situations, I've seen others and a practice where there is lack of baseline data, where they use the results for the first year implementation, then they can look at that as a baseline. I don't know how accurate that might be. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So, okay, the bottom line is, if there's no baseline data, that's not the end of the world. But the baseline data is the best approach to start with. Now, if there is if we've got very, very good monitoring data, that can also work as baseline. Or you have a midline evaluation, which wasn't, that can also work as a baseline. Baseline simply means the starting point, but you can't, of course, do your baseline when you're already halfway down the line. But whatever if you've got implementation data which is robust enough, of course, it won't be as strong and as credible as you would have had, baseline data. But as Cynthia also said, if you've got secondary data elsewhere, some indicators might have some data elsewhere, you could actually use that. Those will be limitations, of course, but you will be able to do something. It will be important, of course, to highlight that, because we have no baseline data. It means it's going to be difficult. You have to find other ways and justify whatever method you decide to use. I want to come back to the other point you raised, Yvonne. I think you talked about difficulties in finding, well, preparedness elsewhere. Or when I've got, see when on the hand up, please, you can make a contribution. Go ahead, Winnie.
If there is no baseline data, can someone use retrospective approach where they try to find a way of knowledge on what was happening before to try and reconstruct or to try and construct the baseline data and then pick from there? I don't know if people can try and use a retrospective approach where they'll move back and try to understand the situation which was existing before the program was implemented and then start from there.
Thank you very much. I think that's Eddie and Winnie there. That's great. There is an approach for a retrospective baseline where within the evaluation, but it does not apply in some indicators. You can't just do that. There are some indicators you can ask questions. What happened? What, for example, you could ask someone 2 years ago. Or you could maybe, let's say you ask someone how on average, what income or how much would you say is your take home now? They say, well, my take home is maybe 50, 60, 100, I don't know. And then say, okay, a year ago, how much do you think it was? I say, I think it was around maybe 30. And how about 2 years back? I can't remember, but it was around. So you can't be very precise, but you can actually collect data of the things that happened before. Then this is just about income. You could ask about other social aspects of an individual. For example, your children are in school right now. Have they always been in school? They say, well, yes, we've never had any dropouts. How about last year? How they've always been there? How about a year before? All our children. So they are. You could design your. You can design your evaluation in such a way that where possible, you can collect baseline retrospectively. But of course, there are caveats that people forget things, but it gives you an indication if you have a large enough sample and you can use that to analyze, it can give you a better place. So that's one way, but it's not like, one solution for everything, but certainly it gives you some leeway. Let me I'm going to run through this and ask a couple of people just to give, so that we can just get a sense of what others are thinking. So now I want to go back to the question around, lack of preparedness on the field. You go to the field, there's nothing happening. What could be the mitigatory approaches that we can do? I think that was the point raised by Yvonne earlier on, to say one of the challenges is when you go to the field, you have planned to be there for 11 days or 10 days, or every minute of your time is scheduled to do something. When you get there, you realize not everything is in order as you would have thought. What could be the plan B? What would you go about it? Can I ask Annie, if you can hear me? I think it's Annie Gatsi. You can please unmute yourself and just share with us what you think could be the best way forward in such a scenario. You already gone to the field, you have booked your accommodation and everything else. You only have 11 days in there. You realize actually the participants whom you thought were already there waiting are not there. What do we do? I'm not sure if she can hear. Maybe I could also ask this Giant. If you can unmute yourself, please, and share your thoughts. If you can't do the audio, please do send some. You can use your chat box. You can just drop some few points on the chat box. Then someone will pick them up, and then we can go through them. We just want to make sure we get contributions from everyone. I'm very much convinced that everyone here has got a very good story to tell. We have experiences which are very important, and let's share those experiences. I mean, this is an opportunity to learn from one another, and this is a practical issue. Actually, it happened to me several times, not once, several times. You always go there and something is not right, and you have to do something about it. So the question here is, what would be the potential mitigatory strategies? What would you do? That's question number one. What would you do? But I also want to ask question two. The second question I want to ask is, what could you have done to avoid a scenario where you find yourself, you are in the field, but the participants aren't ready? Yes, Yvonne, please. Thank you very much for coming up. I'm not sure why everyone is finding it difficult to give us all the experience they have. I know they have a lot to say, but go ahead.
From my experience, I'll answer the second part. What could you have done? Mm-hmm. In the situations where we arrived and people were not expecting us, I feel that we could have been better prepared by giving the participants that we're going to answer our questions more advanced warning. Because in some cases we gave short notice, you get there, people are on leave, we there on a very busy clinic day or whatever. So I think communication and planning with the potential participants in advance will mitigate some of these issues.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I see Nyemero there unmuted. Please go ahead as well.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Loud and
fine. My personal experience is there is a need to consider the socio-political context in line with the evaluations that I have experienced. In most cases, the socio-political circumstance may influence gatekeepers to make sure that they don't give you access to the participants or for you to do whatever I want to do. So in most cases, if you see them not there, I think the best thing is to go back to the gatekeepers, convince them for the need for the evaluation. Then from there, I experienced it and it worked well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. I would say that there is no one single solution to this, but in many cases, it's preparation, preparation, and preparation. And by preparation, I mean getting down to the details of who, even drawing a participant list, a schedule, and requiring people on the ground to give you specific details of the people that has been prepared. You know, sometimes we trust too much. We are given a word to say, oh yeah, we have a scheduled meeting on such a day, so that's fine, everybody will be there. We rarely ask for evidence. Of course, it's hard to say, like, show me where, but if you have a tool, for example, an interview scheduling list, which is detailed enough to include names of the people, the communities they are coming from, and who is the contact person and the time. Now, that information, unless the organizer on the ground has actually gone into and worked out those details, they can't give you. So you would know there and there. If you can't get that information isn't there. So it's about planning, but it's also about verifying and also doing it in a very, very subtle way that you don't offend the other. They don't think, see it as you intruding, too much into what they're doing. But also, I think, as Yevere said, involving the stakeholders, the gatekeepers, also helps. But from my experience, people are very quick to say, everything will be fine. We've told them, that's fine, just come. When you actually arrive, you realize no one is there. So having a tool, a systematic way of tracking, and maybe in a very soft way, forcing people to actually go to them, because they may be also be trusting people to say they're actually coming, but they don't go to the field and verify and confirm with each individual. If it's an FGD, whoever is the lead, confirm with them the time and also confirm with them that they have actually talked to their members. So there's a lot of trust along the way. The leader also trusts their members are going to come. The community organizer also trusts the leader will tell their members. The evaluator also trusts that whoever is coordinating. So there's a lot of unverified trust throughout. So trying to close those loops helps to minimize the chances of getting there and you find there's no one. Anyway, thank you very much. I think we can move on from this session unless someone has a very, very burning question or a contribution to make. I'm just looking down my list to see if anyone has got anything to say. It seems like we do not have. Do we have anything in the chat box? Any question that has been put to the chat box? Is someone tracking there? Edson, have you checked in the chat box? Is there any question there that we might need to attend to?
We do have comments.
There is one question that was raised by Mark, who said, evaluation can be good, but evaluation. And people are making a quite good. they raised quite a number of issues on how can we mitigate the challenges of not seeing.
I don't know if your volume is. I can't hear you. Maybe not. If you can read it from your end as well. I'm struggling to hear Edson.
I'll read through the comments from the session that we just got out from. We have one from Annie, where she says, I think the best thing to do is to try to reach them using phone calls or emails to avoid, okay, there is need to plan in advance by reaching the participants before the time. I think at this time she was responding to the time when you asked the question, and she's saying it's better to reach people through phone calls.
Wonderful.
In advance.
Yes.
And then from Giant, in most cases, you'll not have informed the rightful people to mobilize. Okay, let me just look at it nicely again. You not have informed the rightful people to mobilize the participants. However, you just have to go back to the gatekeepers and arrange for another day. Winnie says the most important thing is to prepare for field work and confirm the availability of participants before getting to the field. However, there are inherent challenges in mobilizing participants, especially in very remote areas or when people do not understand the importance of the evaluation. One needs to discuss with stakeholders on the significance of the evaluation to all relevant parties. Wonderful. And another one, you can also check if there are if there is anyone you can talk to within the vicinity and check whether they are of your coming. Cynthia says, I have used scenario planning as a tool to anticipate and play out some of the challenges that could be encountered in the field. Another one from Winnie. One also needs to find convenient places to meet participants, which will enable more participants to come, to avoid situations where participants need transport fares to come and participate in the evaluation. But planning remains the most important. That is another contribution from Winnie.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Right.
Those are the
Great. I think they're sounding exactly the same thing. So thank you very much, everyone. Please continue to drop your comments, your questions in there. These are really difficult times in terms of technology. So I understand some may not be able to use your microphone to speak audibly. So we want to accommodate. Anyway, any form of contribution is important. What's important is for us to remain as a team so that learning can happen. We can share our experiences. I really appreciate those who have put their comments and questions in the chat box. And we'll continue to monitor this and respond to them as we go. So this session was meant to be 15 minutes, including the 5 minutes feedback. So we've just discussed one. I think we need to move on to other points that are scheduled to run, and then we would use this type of breakout where we just discuss. But even as we continue, if you've got any different question, completely different from what we're talking about, as long as it has to do with evaluation, just drop it in there. If we can't find answers now, I think we will meet again tomorrow to discuss other aspects. It is important that we have them captured. Okay, right. So let me just quickly run through some of the things that we didn't talk about, which you may want to reflect. If you have any questions, you can just drop it on there. So we didn't talk much about the most common types of evaluations. If you have any question or any suggestion or anything that you think can be useful and helpful for everyone, just drop it in the chat box. Then we will have time to respond and discuss on that. Then factors, the push factors, we also, of course, didn't All right, I see Winnie raising her hand. Please go ahead.
All right. Mark raised a question on the do we group ex-post evaluation under impact evaluation? That is his question.
Sorry, come again.
He said, do we group ex-post evaluation under impact evaluation?
Yes, ex-post evaluations should be under impact evaluations, because impact evaluations considers the long-term changes, to test the long-term changes, whereas the outcome and the process will be looking at the short-term and mid-term. So after the post-term evaluations would obviously looking at the project has already expired, so that comes under that. But it's not just the fact that it happens post, it's about the methodology that we use, and it's also about the objective of the evaluation and the utility value of it. So there are a number of things that goes into whether you would group it in there or not. So if you can share a little bit more information about that, that would be useful. We can take it on forward. But yes, we can. The answer is yes, we can group it into there. But there are other considerations also to consider in order for us to say this is an impact evaluation. But the broad distinction is that in impact evaluation, we're trying to test attribution of long-term change. And then to do that, that also determines the methodology we're going to use and whether or not we had been able, of course, previously to set our program in such a way that we can control some of the factors. Then I think that would be also helpful. Thank you very much, Edson. And please do raise your hand from time to time if anything comes up. We want to cover as much as possible. And we also want to be as practical as possible, coming up with any practical scenarios that we can learn from and share our experiences. All right. So we also didn't talk about the positive impacts that can come out of push factors. You remember we said push factors, these are external demands, external needs for carrying out an evaluation. In some projects, if you're a practitioner, maybe some of those demands may not be what the communities would want, or may seem probably not much valuable, but there's a lot of positive impact that comes out of just being, the accountability mentality and doing things right. So we didn't talk much about what sort of benefits or positive impacts we expect to get from the push factors. Then, of course, we didn't have time to talk about the pull factors in our discussions, but we already presented some of those. I think the majority of them are necessary for the project. I mean, the whole intention of evaluation, first, the number one user of evaluation products should be the program, should be the beneficiaries, should be the participants, the stakeholders, the government, and all those who are within the siting of the project, because that information we need it for ourselves. So that should be the number one priority. But whether that's actually a reality, that's another question that we can also discuss. But it's just interesting to note that. All right. Now we're going to move on to another aspect of this discussion, just a bit of an outline on who the audience is for the evaluation. I think we touched on some of that in our discussions, and their diverse needs.
Hello, Doc.
Hello.
We may also want to see if participants are ready for the convenience break. You had said 10:30?
Sure. Oh, it's okay. So I'm
We are
using
past.
different time clock here. That's fine. Thank you very much. Yes, I think we need to break. Thank you for convenience break. Yes. So let's break then, and then resume in 5 minutes. I'll leave you, Nodimo, to help us with coordinating that.
Okay, thank you. It's 10:38. We can be back at 10:45.
Please don't log off in case you have trouble coming back in. You know, with technology, you never know.
That's noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hello, Doc.
Hello, we're back now.
Yes, it's 10:45.
Wonderful. Let's get back to it. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for getting back here on time. So let's continue. We will have another Q&A session coming up, but we're probably going to jump it since we've had lots of discussions. But we have lots of spaces that we have left to try and get as much information as possible from each other and learn from each other. I think that's the main purpose of these sessions, to try and share our expertise, our knowledge, our information with one another. There is no one, I think, who has monopoly over knowledge. It's just we all have different experiences, and those experiences matter. So what I'm trying to do here is just to share a little bit of what I have, and then hopefully if we join with what you have also, then we end up having, you know, a bigger package of understanding. So running through the basic concepts of evaluation, we now want to get on the same page with regards to the audience and who exactly is the audience, who's going to read the evaluation report. And when they read it, what are they going to do with it? What are their needs? What do they want out of it? Now, going back to the previous sessions that we talked about, the push and pull factors, that also determines, you know, the needs of whoever is interested in the report. So you would realize that the needs will vary depending which side of the aisle you're in. If you're a practitioner, program manager, or in a practice, your needs perhaps and interests will be slightly different from a donor partner, and it may be also slightly different from a participant or a beneficiary. So let's just have a quick look at who are the main stakeholders for any evaluation. And here, as already outlined, the whole process of evaluation is meaningless if you don't have a product at the end of it. And it's only that product that then can be used for various sources. But we've been talking about the process of getting that product out and the methods we can use. Now we're talking about that product itself, which is the evaluation report or a presentation or whatever package you put the outcome of the process. That's what we're talking about. So we have to start with the project participants, the beneficiaries. And usually these are overlooked in many times because we don't often say evaluation.
Sorry, Doc, just to interrupt. We are not seeing your screen anymore.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
It's supposed to be shared. Sorry, thank you for that. I'm not sure why it's not sharing. Let me go back and it was okay. Let me. That's strange. I'm not sure why it's not sharing. Okay, let me do it again.
Thank you. That's sorted now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much for raising that up. And yeah, that's good. Please do interrupt me anytime if anything doesn't seem to be, you know, going as it should, so that we can travel together. Apologies, everyone. I don't know. I thought it was sharing. I was just looking at my screen and thinking everyone else is also seeing the screen. All right then. Okay. So yes, back to the point. We've talked about the concept. We talked about the process of evaluation and the theories behind that. Now we're looking at the product. Now we're looking at the outcome. and who is the audience. And our understanding of who the audience is and their needs helps us, of course, in retrospect, to consider the process of the evaluation and the content and the methodology and etc. So we have here a list. This is not an exhaustive list, but the evaluation outputs will be very, very relevant to, first of all, project participants. Now, the project participants, of course, not always remembered in the process because the evaluation reports tends to be very technical, but they don't have to read the report. They have to get the message. The message or the learning coming out of the evaluation can be packaged in different ways so that all audiences will get an opportunity to take it. Then we have, of course, project communities and project staff. They also have a stake and interest, but their interest is different. I mean, what is important here is to note that the interests of all these stakeholders, they're not exactly the same, although they'll be looking at the same report and want to see the same result or product from the evaluation, but their interests may be slightly different. We have local and national stakeholders. If your evaluation is into maybe health or education or something that can have some inferences on other programs that the government is doing or other national level projects, we have to know that, the local authorities and other stakeholders have an interest in it. That's, I think, it was, I'm not sure whether it was Yvonne or who made a comment around challenges with, stakeholders or geopolitical or social political challenges when you're doing evaluation in the field and some of the things that we need to adjust. So evaluations can be political if the subject matter or the subject area you're focusing on is likely to be have political connotations. So there are stakeholders also who will be interested in the same evaluation. Then obviously we have partners, other NGOs, other players. They are also interested partners in that. Then international stakeholders and donors. Now, considering all the different stakeholders and different audiences in this, now as an evaluator, there's always a dilemma and a challenge in meeting the needs of every one of them. And what we go by is what is captured in the terms of reference for the evaluation, the TOR. And sometimes the interests of all stakeholders are usually not captured. But as a professional, you know that the best practice for evaluation from ethical consideration and its whole range of other issues, there are standards that's expected. So basically, not everything that's needed to be captured and covered in the evaluation report would be all included in the terms of reference. So a lot of things will be silent. A lot of things will be maybe because one of these partners has commissioned, and they may have highlighted more of their own interests into the report because they are the ones who are paying for it. But then there are also other stakeholders and other partners in this whole process. And the evaluators, as an evaluator yourself also, you have a reputation to protect, and you have a professional integrity to maintain. That means you have to ensure that the interests of other stakeholders, though not captured, are also covered in their diverse needs. I think the reason I'm highlighting this is so that we want to discuss about these dilemmas and how we can, just getting experiences from those who have been doing similar work to say, how did you manage? Have you found yourself in an area where there are competing interests and you're kind of caught in between, having to do your job, but at the same time also respecting the interests of these various stakeholders and trying to balance and manage the different power dynamics, because some stakeholders are very powerful, others are not as powerful. But at the same time, you want their voices also not to be ignored, but you also don't want to frustrate those who have the pocket. And also you don't want to misrepresent your own professional integrity and etc. And how do you manage the dilemmas on these different facets and pieces that comes into play when you're conducting an evaluation? Now that comes under understanding who your audience are, understanding their diverse needs, and trying to leverage on areas where you could actually come some kind of finding a common ground or somewhere in the middle line. So the needs and interests are very, very diverse. Sometimes they're incompatible. And this is, I think, interesting. From my experience, I've noted some, very loud incompatibilities with different interests. An example of that is, of course, as a program manager, and I'm a commissioner of evaluation. So I've outlined in the terms of reference what I need. I need an impact, well, maybe not, end of program evaluation, and not an impact per se, but I need to account for the changes in the project. And of course, this is part of fiduciary requirements for my donor. They need it for accountability purposes, but also they need to be accountable to their sponsors as well. So they have also an interest in that. Now, the outside stakeholders will be very, very interested in knowing whether this program really works with the methodology and everything else, the implementation. Does it actually bring results? That's a genuine question. And that is important for learning, that's important for policy making, that is also important for future programming. Does it work? How does it work? Under what circumstances? And what are the downsides? Those are very, very good questions. But from program point of view, if it seems that it doesn't work, say the evaluation brings out issues that suggest that it does not work, then there are also other questions around, should we continue doing this program? What do we do about the funding? Should we continue doing it? Or if it seems that actually it seems to work, but maybe the implementation wasn't quite as right. There were some delays, anything that may implicate some performance issues to do with the program, then the project management and everyone will be nervous about that. They wouldn't want to do. But even also the funding partners who would have got funding from elsewhere, as much as they are interested in knowing exactly how the project is performing, they are also nervous about how their donors will react if. So you have all these interests coming up, but at the same time, you have to be able to provide genuine and consistent results. Now, for that reason, they will say, well, let's find an independent evaluator, because the project will have bias, will have vested interest. And then they bring in the independent evaluator, and it just happens to be, one of you, my dear friends here. But then at the same time, you are fully aware of the interests and of your stakeholders, and they will, of course, use whatever means they have to help achieve those goals. But at the same time, at the back of your mind that everyone has different interests, and some of those interests can be, affected negatively or affected positively. And in some cases, the outcome of that evaluation, the evaluation result will determine whether the project is going to continue funding or not. And maybe it also may have an impact on the evaluator themselves if further project. So there are a lot of things that's happening. I want us to discuss practically how we have managed or engaged with these dilemmas of managing the different audiences when you're conducting an evaluation. How practical it is, how difficult it is, or whatever innovation that you have used before, what practical insights can you share? Or maybe if you have not faced any similar challenge before, based on our discussion here and what I've just shared, what your views would be. So let's get into this session of maybe just looking at reflecting on what I've just shared in terms of the different dilemmas. What would be the ideal response if you have ever come across a similar challenge? All right, so we will have just 5 minutes to do this. So if you have any quick point to share, especially your experience, if you have been in a place where you are doing your work as usual, but you realize actually there are, well, of course, these stakeholders and their interests, they're always there, but there are cases where they become so visible. And because you could sense the urgency of addressing the needs of each, or maybe addressing the needs of some more visible than others, you could feel that. If you have find yourself in such a scenario, please just give us maybe a few seconds, just share what those are. If you have not been in such, but considering what we've discussed, what do you think would be your response and reaction if you find yourself in a similar predicament? Okay, I'll pause there and see who would want to come first. I'm just looking at the, all right, Walter. Is it Walter raising your hand, or was I? Seems like I saw Walter raising hand. Was it by mistake? Please, oh, it's Winnie. Give us, yes, go ahead, Winnie.
I thank you, Duke.
Yeah.
Yeah, in as much as the needs of different stakeholders in evaluation are concerned, the different stakeholders have different needs and have different interests in evaluations. But as an evaluator, what you should fight for, what you should try to give, you should try to give reliable results and valid results, which will help in making logical and evidence-based decisions. Your evaluation should give enough evidence to help in future decision-making and inform how future programs will be implemented. So in as much as the political environment, the social environment, or the cultural environment may inhibit that, you should try by all means to counter those limitations which may be caused by different factors and try to come up with the results which will help in bringing logical and evidence-based decisions in the future.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I think that comes really loud and clear. But let's hear what others think. If you can also drop on the chat box your comments, what your suggestions are with regards to that, that would be great. But I'm also looking at the list here. If you want to unmute yourself and speak, please do so. I'm particularly interested to hear if anyone had an experience of that kind of dilemma, especially when you're doing your analysis, you send in your first draft report, you highlighted something that apparently came out from the respondents and your interviews. And then your first feedback from the program or the project team is very, very discouraging, that they're questioning a lot of things and what you said and whether that's actually coming from the field or not, although you know that's the case. And you can sense is perhaps because it's actually highlighted some things. It'll be good to share any such similar experience, and then we can discuss together how best to handle scenarios like that. Do we have anything in the chat yet? I can't see from here.
There's nothing yet.
No, nothing on the chat.
Nothing on the chat, yes. All right, maybe in the interest of time, let's see if we can move on to the next session. All right, moving on, we want to look at the ways in which, as an evaluator, you can identify opportunities which are right for you. Very important when you consider that. Opportunities that are right for you. Right in the sense that this is work that you have sufficient evidence to demonstrate your capability. There are a lot of things that we are able to do, and we can do really a good job, but there's a difference between you able to do it or feeling you can do it and the capacity to demonstrate you can do it. Most of our work at the beginning, when you're looking for to carry out an evaluation, whether you're doing an evaluation internally or you're carrying out an evaluation as a consultant, there's a lot of trust and confidence, which is you know, front-loaded, you know, on someone who's going to do it. If you have been known, of course, previously to do similar work, that's great. People would already know you, so you have a track record. But if you have not done something similar, or you may have done, but you have not been had an opportunity to demonstrate practically, then you must have some pretty good defined materials that demonstrate that you can actually do it. So identifying the right opportunities, okay, I see Winnie, is it Edson's hand is raised. Please go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah, it's Edson's hand. There is a question which is there in the chat box. There's someone who is asking, what do you do if the contractor disown your report?
This is an interesting one. If the contractor disown, is that the question?
Let me find the question and read it exactly as it is.
Okay.
Interested in knowing from the facilitator, what should you do in the event that your evaluation results are queried or not accepted by the contractor?
That is a very, very practical and very relevant question. And thank you very much for asking that question. I don't know who asked it, but thank you very much. And I wish we could have more questions like this. So let me start by saying evaluation, like any research or data gathering process, relies heavily on the credibility of the process. It's not about, how many credentials one has, or it is about the process. Now, the process, of course, takes time and energy and resources. By process, I mean, if you think through your methodology very, very carefully, and you present your logic clearly, and you communicate that logic in your inception report very, very clearly, you do your sampling, you do your data collection tools, they are appropriate, they are validated by the evaluation team. By the reference team. Usually you would have your reference point within the contractor organization. They sign it off, and you keep informing them throughout the process on every stage. And then you get to analysis when they've approved your scheduling, you approved your tools, they've approved everything. And then you come to analysis, you analyze, and there's clarity on how there's clarity and transparency in how the data has been analyzed, and there's clear logical deduction of reasoning from the responses to the results, and then the interpretation of the results. Then the contractor disagrees with you, then you have absolutely nothing to worry about. It happened to me twice, and on both cases, they just, there was nothing. But I've always done my work that way. I want to be robust. I want to be for my own good, and I want to make sure everything is documented and is as comprehensive as it can possibly be. But in times of trouble, when someone challenges your report or challenges your work for various reasons, it could be that someone, maybe they're not happy about what the results that's coming through, or for other reasons. But the process that you would have demonstrated, and the transparency of that process, and the documentation throughout would have to speak for itself. So it does not really matter. In fact, in most cases, when you have all that laid out, they will be denying or, those results, or maybe not wanting to be part of it. It will expose them, as opposed to, it will be their problem as opposed to your problem. So my response to that is, do your work and do it right. Document everything, and also seek ongoing working engagement with them throughout the process. Do not make any surprises. So that at the last minute, they haven't seen what you're doing, and then they just see the report. Because in the process, there will be things along the way that they'll say, oh, can you address that? And then if it's been validated, if they have reasons to believe that certain information is not accurate, and they can provide those reasons, and these reasons can be validated, and there's data to back it up, then there's no reason why you can't change, the interpretation. But there's a difference between results and interpretation. You need more information, background information about results and the project to interpret results, sorry. You need more. It's not just the results, so because so many people said this, and then at the end of the day, that's what they're saying. There'll be context, there'll be other things. So validation process, and then you make your deductive reasoning to say, this is what the outcome is suggesting. In that way, if they disown the document and the process, then you absolutely have got nothing to worry about. But you'll be in trouble if they disown it, and you cannot demonstrate that you actually did a good job, that you have the methodology was right when it was approved, the process was right, it was approved, the tools also were approved, everything was done. Then you'll be in a big challenge, and the only thing that you can do at that point is maybe learn from your mistakes. To say, in fact, it's good practice anyway when you're doing an evaluation to ensure that you are transparent, your systems are robust, and you share and you engage the contractor throughout the process to make sure they provide informed feedback throughout. I see Yvonne's hand up. Please feel free to jump in.
Oh, okay. I think you were just going into what I was trying to summarize what you're saying. So are you saying if you follow due process in the research process and regularly engage with the contractor, you are not really likely to find yourself in situations where your final results are rejected? Is that what you're saying?
In a nutshell, that's absolutely what I'm saying. Because when you're working with your contractor, we'll talk about, I think there's a session coming up about managing expectations. So usually the results will be, rejected if, say, for example, this comes as a surprise to one. If they were being engaged right at the beginning, they have approved the type of question you're going to ask. They've approved the process and everything else. And then the results which comes from the process which has been approved. And then the analysis also which has been approved. Then the results which can also be given to a third person to run a similar analysis and within reason are likely to conclude the same conclusions you come up with. Then I think it would be very, very risky business for the contractor to kind of do that. So chances will be very, very, very slim to find yourself in such a situation. So what I'm trying to say is, if you do your work right, your due processes, there's a little chance that there will be any surprises later on. Because if there comes such surprises, the contractor will be just exposing themselves. However, in the event that maybe you missed some of those things and you get to a place where you have serious trouble justifying how you got to where you are and you don't have the evidence to back yourself up, maybe that's the challenge, because maybe the contractor has a right to say that because you don't have evidence. I've seen some evaluators sometimes who, frankly go and sit under the tree and complete all the questionnaires and come up with something. Those are the roguey ones. But always you want to demonstrate that, no, actually I did what I was supposed to do and engaged the contractor throughout the whole process. That's in summary. Any other question or comment? All right. Let's move on. Okay, so this is where we so I'll quickly run through this. We're almost there. So, like I was saying, that to identify the right opportunities, of course, you have to be able to clearly define your area or understand your area where you are likely to have a competitive advantage because your skills, your experience, your previous work supports that. The whole range of sectors that we have experience in, or you may have experience in. Now, the ability or the qualification to experience to evaluate, augmented by sectorial expertise, would make one better positioned for opportunities than being a generic, evaluator. So if you have a special expertise, maybe economic development, inclusive growth, WASH, health and nutrition, education, or any other sector that is out there, knowing exactly which sector poses better chances of success will be the starting point. But there are a lot of factors that has to be considered. We also need to consider several other issues, including geographical location. Some opportunities will come from a different region where you've never done an evaluation before. And that always comes through when you're presenting yourself. Someone who is talking from practical knowledge and someone who is talking from just theory, it tends to come out. So positioning for identifying which opportunities will be the right opportunities is about considering all the other factors that strengthens one's application bid. So sectorial expertise is very important. The qualifications, of course, individual qualifications and the minimum qualifications requirements, also very important. You may also consider the size and scope of the evaluation. Some evaluations are very small, but this is not obvious. It also takes a bit of a skill to suggest how big the project or the assignment would look like in practice. That information, usually they don't put it in expression of interest or terms of a reference, but there are indications that you can use. In some cases, you can tell by the number of days they are allocating, like they would say or 26 days or 40 days or 80 days or whatever. That gives an indication of how large or how big the exercise is expected to be. Some would put time frame, or others may just may give you an option to suggest time frame. And also others may put budgetary consideration. And again, this depends on whether you're looking at international opportunity or you're looking at a local opportunity. If it's a local opportunity, I think systems, I mean, the practice varies from region to region and from context to context. In most African contexts, the budget issues are never discussed. You hardly see, unless it's probably pushed by maybe some donor partners want you to be transparent enough to say how much budget is available, which of course in many cases is a good advantage both for the supplier and the contractor, because you don't waste time in putting in a proposal which is 3 times as much as expected and then you lose. Or from the contractor point of view, there's no point in receiving too many proposals which are irrelevant because people didn't understand. But it varies from region to region. Some do put, some don't. So that depends on whether it is local or international. Now, all this and more will determine chances of one's success in developing a bid. So before investing time in putting together a proposal or a bid, it is necessary to consider all these factors and then make an informed decision as to, could this be the right opportunity to go for? Does this present a good chance? Can I have a competitive advantage in doing this? And if the answer is yes, then of course move on to the next stage. So these are some of the considerations, but I would want to check in more of a discussion. We were meant to break out into those bigger groups again, but because of our limitations, want to discuss what would be the process that one can take to determine whether an opportunity is appropriate with their time investment or not. Now, this is really important. I mean, for those who on a regular basis are looking out for different types of opportunities that comes up, and they want to know, should I go for this or should I go there? Should I apply for this or not? Is a big, big question. The more precise you are in identifying the right opportunity, the better chances in success, because then it means you can prepare better. It also means you already have competitive advantage. It also means that you won't waste your time, but it means you save a lot of time in doing so. So at this part of the session, I want us to think about what process one would take to determine whether an opportunity is appropriate or not. Now we are assuming already you have identified, we haven't talked about that much, maybe we'll talk in another session about what you can do to keep yourself up to date with the right opportunities. Of course, it goes on to looking the right places, signing up to the right newsletters, or having a list of your mini database of where opportunities tends to be advertised, and making sure that you get these, you check on a regular basis. On average, I think most calls would last for up to 3 weeks. So we're talking about 2 to 3 weeks. So if you don't check on a regular basis, chances are you only find even the right opportunities, but when there's little time to prepare. And when there's little time to prepare, chances are all the time invested will go to waste. But for now, I want us to brainstorm about the process one can practically take to identify or to determine whether an opportunity is appropriate or not, whether it is worth your time investment or not. If you have any tools that you've used before, please share. If you've got any tools, if you've got any ranking tools, or whatever methods that you use, whatever process that you use, I'll be interested to hear from you. So this is now an open discussion. We'll open it up again, and we want to take some comments and suggestions. So let's hear from anyone, really. If you have any suggestions of how one can possibly determine whether a call is worth their time or not. What process would one take? What practical steps can one take? I wish I would know who is able to speak, so I can ask them. I know some may not be able to speak. They can just use the chat box. But let's hear from who is ready to give us their thoughts. Oh, Cynthia, yes. Go on, please. Thank you. Yes, Cynthia, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I haven't used a tool, but I see the importance of using a tool. What we usually do with our team is sit and do a skills audit, just to look at the terms of reference and see what is required, and then talk about who can bring in which skill and so on, and who we should bring in addition. But we haven't designed it in a form of a tool, but I like the fact that it's more organized if we arrange it in the form of a tool. So that has been my experience, that we just go for bids. We look at it, rush through it, see if we think we qualify, and then we go for it. But I think going forward, a tool is more appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. That's very, very helpful. Thank you for that. I agree, absolutely. I agree. Because, sometimes we don't realize how important these things are until we start taking stock of the missed time opportunity. If you look at the opportunity cost, then you realize actually it is better to be systematic. Let me just stop there. I think Yevero is ready to speak. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. If I'm getting you well, you are saying when can you determine whether an opportunity is appropriate and worth time investing? My personal view is you make a personal assessment or a group or a team assessment. Their needs in the team, for development. Maybe you need to develop new connections. You need to develop your own expertise in the area of evaluation. So you can take this opportunity as relevant, and then you get into it for self or team development, for new connections, for new exposure. Then you say, this engagement is worthy, and we can go for it. That's my view on the first bullet. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. I think this point is very, very similar to the previous one, but the important aspect to consider here is a process necessary. Now, a process. So in most cases, I've done it before. I've done it your ways. You just pick up, a call for proposal, a bid. All right, run it through. Oh, this looks, I think we can, and I think we can try it. But without a systematic process of determining that, chances are our emotions also kicks in if it's closer to what I've done before, but other things are not quite as aligned. I'm likely to quickly jump into, I think we can do it, and then realize halfway through that maybe 80% of the needs, the requirements, we can easily tick the box without a question. The other 15%, we are scratching the surface. We're scrambling and trying to get it right. Or maybe it's the other way around, maybe 50% or something like that. But coming up with a process which makes it a bit consistent helps us now in the process of doing that to be able to systematically check whether this is the right or not. Usually in some places they call it a go or no go decision. And it's kind of ranked with matrices to say, so you try to be as objective as possible, even if it's in a sector that you like so much, but simply because of one aspect that the contractor is asking for, which we may not have. If you already have a ranking system, you may come out that the points are really very low. It does not mean that you're not going to go for it, but it gives you informed, it makes you get yourself in an informed position where you know that, okay, in the areas that we cannot easily bring together all the materials that we need, that means we need to invest additional time. That means we need to invest extra time. So it helps us to do that. But that's very, very important to hear how we can go about doing that. So this was just trying to share any examples, and I'm glad that it seems like we kind of on the same page. Any other question or comment in the chat box?
Yes, we have one from Mark Mulovi.
Mm-hmm.
Says we don't use a tool, but we look at it and see if we qualify or we can bring on board to fulfill the requirement, then we bid.
That's also very helpful. I think it's similar to what we've been just discussing. But what I would say, the follow-up question to that is, how consistent is the process of looking at it? I've observed my own challenges, but I'd be interested to hear others, whether there is a certain way of looking. I mean, is there a systematic way of looking at it that you can tell the other person how to look at it? Or if you want to teach another person, maybe you bring in new stuff, you want to help them do the same, how would you go about doing that? So Mark, if you can drop some more points on there, or anyone else can comment. I just want to know practically, is there a process of looking at it that you could say, this is step 1, step 2, step 3 of looking at it, which if you're not the one doing it, you can delegate to someone else, someone new, and they can do exactly that, and they can do a good job. Go ahead, Cynthia. Yes, Cynthia, I saw your hand up. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm interested. I know people will probably chat about this, but I'm really interested in what others have used as a process, because like I said, we are not using a tool, but I see the importance of using a tool. But if people don't have experience to share, maybe you can share with us if you have a technique that you use for this. I'd be interested in knowing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the technique I've used is the go and no go decision matrix. It's not, there are many different tools that can be used to do that, but I use an Excel sheet. This will be pre-populated with the skills that I have, the areas of operation where I operate, where I know I have experience in, the sectors that I operate in, and each of those, and of course, number of years. You know, the usual, in every TOR, there are usually, they are the usual competence requirements. They are usual technical requirements that we have. So I've drafted a standard for that. Of course, this will be tailored to suit the sector. Now within that, then I have allocated points for each based on the level of importance. And when I look at new opportunity that comes up to decide whether it fits or it does not fit, I then look at the areas in my matrix and check which of those areas, literally go through a checklist and input the key requirements and details in the matrix and award scores. Now, of course, that's not the only decision-making process that I use, because you might find in some of the opportunities, the score will be very, very low, but I still feel that for some other reasons, because maybe I've worked in that region before, or there's one area that I can reinforce to cover up for other, I would probably go for it. But then my approach to that particular assignment is now based on the fact that based on my scoring, I know that there are 3 or 4 weak points. So if I decide to go for it, I already knowing that these weak points, I need to strengthen them. And then I find ways of strengthening them. So that's the one I've used. Now using that, it helps me to quickly drop some of the opportunities which would take me a long time to actually try to cover the gaps. So come again, Cynthia, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. You know, when you talked of scoring, I just remembered something that I've come across a bit that had a scoring sheet. It gave you a guide on how they would score you as a consultant.
Yes.
So, for example, they would say layout 5% and so on. They had gradings. They had a score sheet. So it's because you mentioned it that I'm thinking perhaps, you know, we could look for score sheets like that and develop our own. Because we once tried a bit like that. We didn't win it because it was one of those UN competitive ones. But it really did give us an idea of whether we qualify or not. So for example, under expertise, they had the most marks. And we had to put up a team to try and meet those marks. And under understanding of terms of reference, for example, they also had very high marks. So it just gave us an idea of scoring ourselves. And I'm thinking right now that we could probably download some of those and use them as our own tool. So thank you very much for bringing up that scoring sheet that you've used yourself. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's very true. In fact, most organizations use a scoring system. In fact, most organizations who require transparency in the bidding process, whether they advertise it or they don't, they use a scoring system. It's just that they don't tell us how they would have scored it. But if you have your own scoring sheet, that tells you your areas of competitive advantage, the areas that you know you excel. Because if you do a scoring sheet, you would know, right. Any opportunity that has these 5 key areas that I can go for it with my eyes closed, because I'm very strong, or we are very strong in this area. Any opportunity that doesn't have this, that means we have to work a little bit harder. And then, of course, we can use the scoring sheets for the contractors to also make that. But I found it very, very helpful. One, to save time. It saves a lot of time. And also, it makes you prepared for areas where you are not as strong, because you already know from your own scoring that it's likely to be, less effective. Then you can make the necessary decisions. All right. If there's no other question or comment on the chat box, maybe we can move on. Is there any? Can you confirm, Edson? Maybe he's not hearing me. No, Duma, can you confirm? Do we have, or we don't have, so we can move on?
There is a question, Doc, from Yvonne.
Yes.
There's one from Yvonne, yes. Do standard tools exist?
Standard tools, I haven't seen standard tools. I mean, the consultants industry kind of secretive in a way. People don't tend to share their own. I haven't not seen a standard tool, but they may be there somewhere. But we'll be happy to, if we find some, to share with the team. If anyone has a standard tool elsewhere, I've got a tailor-made. I haven't seen a standard one. But we do have standard scoring tools from the contractor point of view. Those who, but I wouldn't call them standard because the weighting is different. One, you would have more weight for one aspect, and the other, it will be different weight. Okay, thank you. Let's see if all right, so this was another one. I think we've already discussed this. Do we need another coffee break? Or we are okay, since we are almost finished? We can continue, right?
Yes, I think we can continue.
All right.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The comment section, everyone is saying yes.
All right, wonderful. Now let's look at how to prepare for successful bidding. I think some of the things that we've been talking about speaks to that very same issue, because part of doing the having a scoring sheet or standard tool, or at least some kind of process that makes it systematic when deciding which one to go for, is also part of preparing and positioning for successful bidding. In a nutshell, it is we're trying to minimize as much as possible time that can be, already made. You can have all the other things that you need to do in one place, so that when the time comes to put together a bid, you just kind of harvest all the information that you already have, instead of starting from scratch. So understanding the requirements, almost all the bids that I've seen, or the call for proposal, they may come in different forms or shapes, but they have something to do with the background of the project. You always have objectives there. You always have some recommended methodology and approach. Evaluation scope, not all, but some would do. But again, you have an idea of the scope if you look at the objectives of the evaluation and how big the project is. Sometimes they indicate in terms of project size, in terms of the overall project budget. will give you an indication of how big the project is. And then the suitability and how you can match the competence with what's required. I think it takes us back to if we have a tool that already outlines the key skills and competence and scoring sheet based on what's required, you match it side by side to determine whether or not there's a clear match. And then, of course, there's need to consider the time frame and deadline. Now, by time frame and deadline, we're talking about the time to prepare the proposal, to put the bid together. It depends really on where we get the notification or the adverts for the opportunities from. If we are searching on a regular basis, my recommendation is if you have a place where you find this, look for them every day. Because of course they will come, it won't take much time to do that, maybe 30 minutes or 20 minutes or even an hour, that's okay. But that would really pay off big time in the sense that if you get an opportunity, a really, really good opportunity when there's enough time to prepare, then you are better off. It's heartbreaking to find something that if you use your own scoring, maybe around 90, 80%, 90%, and you can easily put together all the requirements and be competitive enough, but you just don't have the time to assemble that. And there's a lot of course, work that needs to be done if you need to bring in extra to build a team around that. You need also time. So I found it very, very important to consider getting information about which opportunities are out there as early as possible. And to do that, because there's no structured way of when they're going to be posted. The organization just post when whatever day, time frame, and all that. So the best thing is to try and look for this as regular as possible. Oh, I'm kind of going backwards. Right. So this was just a very short outline, and I'll skip the Q&A because I think we are running out of time. But I want to go straight into some of the things that you consider in the planning process. This is at the backdrop of what we already discussed, identifying your prime area of success. There's a very big risk, us as consultants, that any opportunity that comes and seems to be within the area that we operate in, would want to try to take a go with it. Chances are that if we don't identify our areas where we're likely to be very, very successful, then we'll pick up even the ones that we just waste time in. So identify your prime area is very important. And the prime area can be defined by different parameters. It could be sectorial, it could be also based on the regions that you've done something before. It could be also based on your own technical expertise and qualifications. But that prime area will help to quickly identify which opportunities will be the best match, but at the same time, preparing for successful process of bidding. Prioritizing the most appropriate opportunities, I think it's again linked to having a clear, systematic way of identifying, mapping which opportunities ranks at the top, and then prioritizing only those. Will then save time, and then you can have more quality presentation. Then systematic and regular search for opportunities. One other aspect that I find very, very useful is to have materials well prepared and ready to go. Like quality materials, such as if we look at all the different types of bids and opportunity that comes, they are almost asking for similar things. So a good quality summary of one's qualification and experience is tailored to prime areas that we're focusing on, of course, you would have to tweak them here and there. But if they're already there, that means it significantly reduces the time needed to put up a quality bid. This takes up quite a lot of time to do. But of course, for each evaluation type and sector, you have to have something like, for example, in my own area, because I'm a specialist in the livelihoods area, livelihoods programming, for value chain development and etc. So there is a type of work required if it's market systems, if it's to do with climate smart agricultural practices. They usually have similar type of competencies they're looking for. So if I'm going to develop a summary of my CV or experiences, every time I'm trying to apply for that, that's taking a lot of time. But I have a standard tailored already for that sector. Now, if I have 3, 4, 5, 6 sectors, and I have them tailored for each of those, it's just a matter of pulling out that and of course, tailoring it to the required or the requirements of the proposal. That goes again with the cover letters. It also goes with the general outlook and methodological section of the proposal. So the basic principle here is, as we have in the what do you call it, in the conveyor type industrial processing, where you already have ready-made things that are ready to go on the system, and then you just, within this process, there are things that we can make sure that they're already there, that they will minimize time in preparing. You just have to tweak them, to tailor them, to make them unique, make them specific, to make them align with the requirements of the core, other than doing all over again each time. And to do that, we have to identify first, of course, our prime areas, because you can't do it for everything. You need to identify your prime areas. If you need to do a unique, different proposal from time to time, completely different, that's fine, as long as you can save time on other work. Another aspect to consider is establishing partnership and collaboration well in advance with, of course, experienced associates. Collaboration and partnerships are extremely important. In this field, I think success depends hugely on the ability to work together and calling on each other. So in each of the prime areas that we have, if we have clear collaboration and we know our pool of expertise is already there, already made, then that should give us good chances. And then, of course, leveraging time efficiencies. I mean, leveraging time efficiencies includes all the things that we talked about. Having things that needs to be there, needs to be sorted, like CVs, if they're already tailored, cover letters, and or the other technical work that we've provided before, especially the examples. Usually they call for examples of previous work, and positioning ourselves in asking our contractors for an opportunity to publish, or maybe if they can publish on their website, or if we can find it in electronically somewhere, because as more and more questions comes about us sharing our previous work, it becomes increasingly important to have access to this. But some would want their confidentiality and they wouldn't want to share. That would be a bit of a challenge, but thinking around that and making sure you have all ready makes it all much worth it. Right, I'm just going to, let me see how much is left. I think we're almost through. This is our last discussion, barriers and challenges. Let's just have this one last discussion and then we're done for the day. Right, so pre-positioning for success in the bidding process, challenges and barriers. So let's consider this. In our practical environments, what sort of challenges or barriers have we encountered in the process of pre-positioning? And what ideas or experiences can we share in that process? You can drop your point or question or contribution in the chat, and you can also unmute yourself and just share. We can just do this quickly, and then we can close. It's been a long while, and maybe one contribution or two would be fine. Just want to know if there's anyone who had tried to go out there and position themselves and have faced some challenges or barriers that they may want to share with us. Challenges and barriers. Is there anything on the chat box? I can't see it from here. Otherwise, we'll move on.
No, we don't have anything on the challenges and barriers.
Okay.
But a question from Cynthia. Okay, there's now another one from Yvonne. Cynthia had said, can you please share with participants some platforms where they can find calls and bids? Where do they search for opportunities? And then Yvonne is responding, I'm sure, to the most recent session. I find that it is not easy to win a bid as a lead consultant if you are an imaging consultant.
Yeah, so that's a challenge. I think, yes. So it goes again about positioning. And as an imaging consultant, yes, it might be difficult as a lead consultant. I think that's very, very true. One of the reasons we're doing these sessions is trying to come together and maybe share some experiences and see how we can grow from that. But yes, that is true. As an emerging consultant, it's very difficult to be a lead for obvious reasons. But working alongside and collaborating with others, it then will take us to that level, because then it's just about an opportunity to showcase what we are capable of, what we are able to do. Then concerning sharing of the tools, I may not be able to do right now since I haven't, but tomorrow we're going to have another session. There are a number of sites where they regularly advertise for opportunities, and it depends on whether you want regional or local opportunities. Even local opportunities are also found in some of the international ones. And again, it's important how you want to position yourself. If you're positioning yourself for international work, then there are platforms for international consultancies. If it's just for local, and then those will be usually advertised locally, but you also would find some on those platforms. I'll try to put down a list of the main sources where you could find not just consultants opportunities, but a lot of resources on monitoring, evaluation, and community of practice. There are a lot of community of practice out there with free resources to further develop ourselves. I'll try to put that list for our next session tomorrow and share. Thank you very much for that. I think we can now, just wrapping up, just on the hour, I'll just run through this. So we covered a number of points today. We first looked at the basic concepts of evaluation. We talked much about the meaning of evaluation, just in passing, and the nature and types, the key concepts and topics in the evaluation field. And we had a bit of discussions around the pull and push factors within the evaluation arena. And then we also looked at how to identify opportunities, specifically around audience and their diverse needs. and how to identify right opportunities. And then we finally talked about positioning for successful bidding and planning for success. Tomorrow we'll be talking more about actually putting a proposal. We might actually have one or two examples from the actual TOR and go through the process of sharing how much input we can put in that. I would like to end it here and maybe pass back the baton to Nodmo. If there are any closing remarks or any questions from participants, from anyone, please feel free. But let me take this opportunity to hand over this process back to Nodmo. Thank you very much. And it's been really a pleasure to go through this process. And we hope to meet again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Just to read one comment from Yvonne, she went on to say it could be prudent to start off by collaborating with experienced consultants, given that it's challenging as an emerging consultant to get a bid. On that note, thank you everyone for staying on board for the 3 hours. We hope that you'll be able to join our session tomorrow, since this is a 2-day training, starting also at 9 in the morning, ending at 12. You may also invite any other colleagues that you know would benefit from this session and would be happy to have them on board. Thank you, everyone. Cynthia, Mawema, anything from you before we close?
No, just to thank you, Dr. Joseph. Thank you very much for the brilliant presentations. Thank you to the participants for the interactive discussions. It was very useful. We are learning from each other, and looking forward to people coming back tomorrow. And please, if there are people who couldn't attend, well, who couldn't participate today that you know of, that you think will benefit from these sessions, please feel free to invite them so that they can register today and they can come on board tomorrow. Thank you once again, and see you all tomorrow.